He wasn't scheduled to move, he wasn't supposed to speak. But when Sergeant Adrian Cole heard a child sobbing inside Donald Trump's locked SUV, he broke formation. Trump's team told him everything was fine. They said, "It's under control." They told him to step back. But then came the second sob, and this time he reached for the door. When it opened, the entire courtyard froze, not because of what she said, but because of how she looked up at him and asked if she was in trouble. Before we show you the exact moment Prince William arrived and the sentence that ended the discussion for good, drop a comment telling us where in the world you're watching from. Tap like, hit subscribe, and turn on the bell icon. Because this wasn't a security breach, this was something far worse. This was abandonment. Late afternoon clung to the inner courtyard of Buckingham Palace, with a peculiar stillness. Not silence, but a hush between ceremonial beats. A fleet of black diplomatic SUVs idled along the far stone wall, their tinted windows reflecting the ornate balconies above. Engine murmurs, soft-shoed aides moving papers, the crackle of radios kept at half volume. All of it painted a picture of controlled transition. One phase of the state visit had ended. Another was moments from beginning. Sergeant Adrian Cole stood beneath the West Arch, motionless in the deep red of the Coldstream Guard. Gold buttons caught the low light. His tall ceremonial bearskin cast a sharp shadow across his cheekbone. He didn't blink often, but when he did, it was slow. The kind of blink that said he wasn't just seeing, he was registering. No longer a young guardsman, Adrian was trusted with more than form. His post today was part of a quiet, internal perimeter, an unspoken safeguard embedded inside the grandeur. While the world believed his role was symbolic, his true task was one of silent proximity, protection for the youngest royal, visible during the visit, Princess Charlotte. She had been part of a brief, carefully managed appearance for photographs earlier that hour. No press, no crowd, just a low-key family segment designed for private guests. She had arrived in a small convoy with her governess and aide, escorted personally by her father, Prince William. According to schedule, she was to be returned to the North Wing before the next diplomatic segment began, well away from the foreign delegation now reassembling near the Eastern Gallery. But as Adrian stood still, hands folded neatly behind his back, something pressed against the edges of his attention. It wasn't movement, it wasn't shouting, it was the absence of clarity. Trump's motorcade, more heavily guarded than most, had staged itself along the inner courtyard's central line. Adrian had memorized its position without needing to, out of habit, not instruction. The lead SUV had parked a full meter off alignment, minor perhaps. But these visits ran on choreography, not chance. Details mattered. From where he stood, Adrian could see the reflective sheen of the lead SUV's roof, the faint glint of its reinforced door frame, the idle twitch of a driver's hand adjusting something on the console. The door had not opened since arrival. A staffer, tall, suited, earpiece taut, stood nearby, pretending not to watch everything. And then something. Adrian's eyes narrowed just a fraction. There, in the moment between two passing aides, came a sound he hadn't expected. A muffled noise. Too soft to be alarm, too gentle to be engine-related, almost like a breath hitched mid-sob. He didn't move. Not yet. Instead, he let the sound pass, bounce, and vanish behind the shuffle of footsteps and the hum of ceremonial clockwork. Maybe nothing, maybe everything. A few more seconds passed. He studied the vehicle. No one approached it. No one emerged from it. The reflection of the palace windows danced on its glass, but inside, the outlines were blurred. Adrian Cole didn't shift posture, but something inside him had already leaned forward. The courtyard remained in a holding pattern, movement without motion. Palace aides conferred over last-minute adjustments to the itinerary. Two junior liaisons crossed the gravel with iPads clutched to their chests. A senior American staffer laughed too loudly at something a press secretary said. Even the air seemed to hold its breath between rehearsed steps. And then, there it was again. A sound, so slight, so fleeting, it might have been imagined. A soft, wet inhale. A child's breath catching as they tried to quiet themselves. Muffled by glass. Drowned beneath idle diesel. But Sergeant Adrian Cole heard it. Not clearly, not enough to write it down, but enough that the skin at the base of his neck prickled. He tilted his chin slightly, angling his vision toward the lead SUV again. Black exterior, diplomatic plate, rear tinted beyond standard. Engines still running. He scanned the immediate surroundings. No visible movement inside. 2 security staff posted near the rear flank, both wearing American pins, earpieces tucked behind their collars, postures relaxed. Not careless, just settled. Adrian kept still. If he moved too soon, the entire framework would shift, agents stiffening, liaisons pivoting, whispers starting. And if he was wrong, then the guard becomes the story, and they don't get to be wrong. Still, something pulled at him. He knew the sound of children trying not to cry. It wasn't the sound itself. It was the pause after. The little hiccup of silence that follows a swallowed sob. He'd heard it before in stairwells during palace birthdays, after a scraped knee or a whispered argument between siblings. And there was no one nearby who matched that profile. No young staff, no aides in distress, no voices that small. He took a mental inventory. Charlotte had been escorted in with her governess and 2 senior aides. The group was supposed to have exited through the north passage, back toward the residence wing. He hadn't seen them go. He remembered the look on her face earlier, serious for her age, more observant than playful. She had clutched a small object in her hands during the photo op. It hadn't been a toy. It looked like a bracelet, silver or maybe blue, woven, like something made, not bought. He refocused on the SUV. No aide nearby. No governess. No visible adult entering or exiting that vehicle in the last 10 minutes. Just a single rear shape, faintly moving behind the tint. Small. Slumped. His pulse didn't quicken. It slowed. Condensed. Like it always did when something wasn't just unusual. It was wrong. Adrian Cole didn't take his eyes off the SUV, but in his head something clicked over. Whatever was inside that car, it wasn't supposed to be alone. Sergeant Adrian Cole stepped off his post. Not with fanfare, not with drama, just a single precise motion. His polished boots gliding across the worn stone, rifle still at rest behind his back. He crossed the small arc between his assigned position and the lead SUV, with the kind of gait that didn't draw attention, but couldn't be mistaken for casual. The American agent spotted him before he reached the vehicle. Tall, sharp suit, late 40s. Earpiece snug, eyes calculating. He turned from his conversation mid-sentence, lips pressed into a practiced smile. "Afternoon, Sergeant," he said crisply, stepping between Adrian and the rear passenger door. "Everything's handled." Adrian's voice remained level. "Is this vehicle occupied?" "Correct. Part of the principal convoy. We're just holding here until the next segment begins. I'll need visual confirmation. A minor royal may be present." That got a pause. The agent's smile thinned slightly. "We were informed all royal minors have cleared the floor." "I have reason to believe otherwise." A flicker of annoyance crossed the man's face. Not hostility, just the kind that came from juggling egos and timelines and not wanting one more fire to put out. He stepped in just a little closer. "With respect, Sergeant, this is a high-clearance vehicle. The President's team maintains custody and responsibility over all passengers until the convoy moves. We don't unlock the cabin unless directly instructed." Adrian's eyes never shifted. "Princess Charlotte may be inside, alone." The agent blinked, then forced a chuckle. No. She exited after the photo segment. She's with..." "I did not see her exit." "She was escorted inside," the agent replied, less certain this time. "By whom?" The man hesitated. "One of the royal aides, I assume. Look, I understand your caution, but this is the safest vehicle on the ground." Adrian took half a step forward. His voice didn't rise, but something in the tone sharpened. I heard her, sir. The agent's smile faltered. Before he could speak again, a second American staffer approached. Younger, breathless, clearly sensing something brewing. We good here? The senior agent gave a slight shake of his head. Sergeant here thinks we might have a... Oh, Adrian interrupted softly. This is not a request. It's a child protection verification. Both agents glanced at each other. The younger one scoffed. She's not a hostage. She's a kid sitting tight. Adrian looked at the door. A moment passed. Behind the glass, a faint shift in shadow. He didn't blink. I will ask once more. Open the door. The senior agent sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose. Look, we've got optics to manage here. He's standing right there. A nod toward Trump, several paces away, deep in conversation with a palace official. You're about to draw attention where there doesn't need to be any. Adrian didn't look at him. He looked at the window and listened. And there it was again. A breath caught mid-cry. He stepped forward, gloved hand resting on the door handle. I'm not here to manage optics, he said. I'm here to make sure no child in this courtyard feels forgotten. The agents didn't move, but the tension between them shifted. The younger one shifted his stance, casually resting a hand near the earpiece on his collar. The older one spoke more carefully now, no longer brushing Adrian off, but still trying to steer the moment back under control. Let's not turn this into a scene, Sergeant, he said. She's fine, probably just waiting for someone inside to come get her. Adrian didn't answer. He stepped slightly to the left, one slow pivot that brought his line of sight just past the agent's shoulder. The SUV's tint was nearly blacked out, but with the angle and the shifting light, a thin sliver of interior appeared through the windshield reflection. It caught the beam of the setting sun bouncing off a palace window, and for a moment that beam sliced straight into the cabin. That's when he saw it. Not her face, not yet. Just a pale pink backpack slumped across the seat. Familiar. Faded glitter across the front, and a purple unicorn patch stitched near the zipper. He had seen that exact bag bouncing against Princess Charlotte's back less than 2 hours ago. The strap was twisted. Not held. Not worn. Just lying there. No adult was seated next to it. Then, as the light shifted again, Adrian caught a wrist. Thin, unmoving, half-tucked beneath the bag, a small hand with a delicate blue bracelet tight around it, the woven band of soft thread gifted by her older brother during a school art lesson. He remembered. It had come up in briefing, and then the face, barely visible behind the glint of the window, but clear enough, Charlotte. Tucked against the seatbelt, her head tilted to one side, eyes wet, her small body tense with the stillness of someone trying not to be noticed. Her mouth moved, soundlessly. She wasn't playing. She wasn't calm. She had been crying, and she was alone. Adrian's stomach hardened. The older agent followed his gaze, turning just enough to see the corner of the backpack, but not her. Still, his posture changed. Okay. Let's get her out. I'll grab the governess. She's not here, Adrian said, voice now flatter. I've had eyes on the north wing entrance. No aid has come out. No escort has approached this vehicle. The younger agent finally looked, catching the silhouette through the windshield. Oh, come on. She's just waiting for the next pickup. Why is this even as... She's been alone, Adrian cut in. For how long, we don't yet know. In a locked vehicle. No visibility, no access, no comfort. He tapped his radio once, a short, coded signal. No words. Just a ping to internal palace security. Possible breach of minor royal protocol. Immediate presence required. The agents shifted uneasily. This was spiraling into something formal now. Something that would require names, explanations, and reports. And still, inside the SUV, Charlotte sat frozen. She wasn't banging. She wasn't screaming, but her eyes had found the red uniform through the window, and they held. She had stopped crying, but now she was waiting. For him. Adrian Cole's posture no longer resembled ceremony. It was quiet readiness now. Squared shoulders, weight balanced, gloved hand still resting gently against the door handle of the idling SUV. The reflection in the window had vanished again with the shifting light, but the image was carved into his mind, Charlotte, alone, watching, waiting. The senior American agent stepped in, voice low but taut. "Let's take a breath here. We're minutes out from the next segment. Her team's probably on their way." Adrian didn't move. "And until they arrive, she remains locked in a sealed vehicle, unsupervised?" "She's not unsupervised. She is unaccompanied. That's not a semantic issue." From behind the agents, another figure approached, moving briskly but not hurried. Inspector Hartley, lead palace security coordinator, grey-templed and sharply dressed in a three-quarter tactical coat, arrived with quiet gravity. He read the scene in a second. Adrian's posture, the agent's tension, the still closed car. "Report," Hartley said without pause. Adrian's eyes didn't leave the door. "Visual confirmation of minor royal in distress. Solo occupancy. No registered escort." Hartley turned to the senior agent. "Is this accurate?" The American didn't answer right away. He was calculating optics, fallout, blame. "She's calm," he finally said. "She's not in distress. We were under the impression she'd be retrieved momentarily." "Under whose instruction?" Hartley asked. A shrug. "One of the palace aides. We assumed clearance." Hartley blinked slowly. "You assumed wrong." The junior agent interjected, exasperated now. "She's not in danger. This is a VIP-grade vehicle, ballistics proof, tempered seals. Best air recirculation system you can ask for. You think she's safer in your arms than in that car?" Adrian's voice, for the first time, broke its steady cadence. Not louder, just colder. "She's safer when someone looks her in the eye and reminds her she's not forgotten." The courtyard had shifted. Trump stood just beyond the security line, glancing in their direction, unaware but watching. Several palace aides had paused mid-step, sensing the perimeter mood tightening. No shouting, no chaos, just a change in gravity. Hartley gave the agents a choice. "You'll open the door now, or my guard will. If you'd like to decide how that looks in the final report, I suggest you do it quickly." The senior agent hesitated. That hesitation was enough. Adrian moved. He stepped closer to the door, full frame blocking the rear window. One hand dropped briefly to his belt. Not to a weapon, to a manual release override designed for vehicle rescue. The senior agent's hand darted to stop him. "Wait!" Adrian looked him square in the eye. "No!" He pressed the release. There was a soft click from within the frame, the central lock disengaging. The rubber seal hissed faintly as the pressure equalized. Then, with deliberate calm, Adrian pulled the door open. Air shifted. Light poured in. And there, small, tense, wide-eyed, sat Princess Charlotte, her knees drawn to her chest, her hands gripping the fabric of her coat, cheeks still wet. She didn't cry out. She just looked up and whispered, "I didn't know where anyone went." The sound of the door unlatching landed like a crack in ice. Subtle, controlled, but unmistakable. Sergeant Adrian Cole stood with one hand on the edge of the door, his frame blocking the view from onlookers, casting a tall silhouette that swallowed the light as it spilled into the cabin. The American agent stood frozen behind him, not resisting, not speaking, simply bracing for a moment they no longer had control over. Inside, Princess Charlotte sat very still. Her seatbelt was still fastened across her chest. Her small shoes didn't touch the floor. One hand clutched the strap of her backpack like it might anchor her to something she understood. The other rested against the seat, half curled. Her cheeks glistened. Her lips were pressed tightly together. Her eyes, red but dry, flicked upward the moment she recognized the red tunic, the tall bearskin, the white cross strap stretched across Adrian's chest, and she exhaled. Not relief, not sobbing, just a single shaky breath, the kind that comes only after a long, silent effort not to make a sound. Adrian knelt beside the open door, one knee lowered to the gravel. his voice level but gentle. "Your Royal Highness," he said quietly, "you're safe. May I help you out?" She didn't move at first. Then, slowly, she nodded. He unfastened her seatbelt with one gloved hand, the click unnaturally loud in the still air. Her body shifted slightly forward, but she didn't climb out. She waited for him. Adrian extended both arms. She reached for him without hesitation. As he lifted her out of the SUV, she curled instinctively against his shoulder, not clinging, not weeping, just resting there, her head tucked near the edge of his bearskin. Her hands curled against his coat like it was something she'd held before. Across the courtyard, people had begun to notice. Staff slowed their pace. Guards along the upper walkway adjusted posture. A few aides stopped mid-sentence, but no one spoke, no one dared. Adrian stood upright with the child in his arms, her small form sheltered beneath the red wool of his uniform. He turned slowly, deliberately, not for spectacle, but so that those nearby could see. She was alone, she had been crying, and she was not supposed to be in that vehicle. The Secret Service agents stood rooted, lips parted, but their faces had already shifted from resistance to retreat. The older one tried to speak, to explain, but Adrian didn't look at him. He raised his head and projected his voice across the courtyard, clear and firm. "Get Prince William, now!" The words weren't loud, but they struck the stone like a commandment. A junior palace runner broke from the far portico and vanished inside. And in the space he left behind, silence bloomed. Not anger, not panic, accountability. The runner disappeared into the stone archway, his footsteps echoing briefly before the palace swallowed the sound. In the courtyard, the scene remained suspended, like a portrait painted mid-stroke. Adrian Cole stood near the open SUV, unmoving. Princess Charlotte remained against his shoulder, her small form curled beneath the arc of his red tunic. Her fingers had stopped trembling, but her grip hadn't loosened. Every so often, her head shifted slightly. Not searching, just waiting. No one approached. No one dared. Then, from the palace's east entrance, Prince William appeared. No press, no footman, no announcement. Just a father, walking with purpose. His jacket sleeves were half rolled, as if he'd been interrupted mid-briefing. His tie was loosened, but his face, composed, focused, drawn tight at the jaw, said everything. As he crossed the courtyard, his eyes swept the scene. The open SUV, the red tunic, the child in arms, the silent staff, the two American agents standing awkwardly aside. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. Charlotte turned her head as he neared. Her voice was thin but clear. "Papa?" William's stride faltered just slightly, not from surprise, but from impact. He closed the remaining steps quickly, lowering himself beside Adrian with instinctive grace. His hand reached to touch her back. "Are you all right, darling?" Charlotte shifted, but didn't speak right away. Her hand lifted from Adrian's coat and found the front of William's shirt, gripping tightly. "I didn't know where anyone went," she whispered. William looked up at Adrian. Adrian didn't fill the silence with explanation. He simply offered. She was alone in the back seat. Locked in, no aid visible. "I heard her before I saw her." William's eyes darkened, but his tone remained low. "How long?" Adrian shook his head faintly. "Hard to say. Long enough." Charlotte whispered again. "They told me not to move, that I'd make it worse." The words were soft, but sharp enough to pierce the space around them. William turned toward the SUV, then toward the agents, who had taken a careful step back, faces tense with the unease of men who knew they'd stepped over a line, even if by omission. The senior one raised a hand slightly. "Sir, if I may, there was a misunderstanding. We assumed—" "You assumed wrong," William said, still quiet, still deadly calm. Charlotte reached up, and he took her from Adrian's arms without pause, shifting her weight as if he'd done it 1,000 times, which he had. As he stood, she clung to his collar, her head buried into the crease of his neck. Trump, finally turning from his corner of the courtyard, looked over with faint confusion, noting the cluster of stillness. William didn't acknowledge him. Instead, he turned to Adrian one last time. "You made the right call," he said. Adrian nodded once. "Thank you, sir." William adjusted Charlotte's weight gently and walked toward the arch, her face tucked safely from view. No spectacle, no press, just a father, a daughter, and the cold fact that somewhere, somehow, someone thought just a few minutes alone was an acceptable choice. Prince William disappeared beneath the eastern archway, his daughter still held firmly in his arms, her head resting against his shoulder. The silence he left behind remained dense, not out of reverence but reckoning. Aides, staff, and agents stood in uneven orbits. Some avoided eye contact altogether. Others watched Adrian Cole with a new kind of awareness. Not deference, not fear, but the quiet discomfort that comes when someone does their job too well and you're left exposed in comparison. The Secret Service agents still hovered near the SUV. One of them, the younger, let out a breath like he'd been holding it for 10 minutes. He turned to his superior. "That didn't look good." The senior agent didn't answer immediately. His gaze lingered on the door, now wide open to the world, and the seat where a child had just been pulled from, like luggage. Then he muttered, "It wasn't supposed to be like that." A third staffer approached, one of the diplomatic advance team members, clipboard still in hand, voice low and apologetic. There was confusion about pickup order. Trump's people thought she was going to be re-escorted. The aide responsible for her movement said she was handed off temporarily. Nobody wanted to cause a delay, so they figured she'd wait, Adrian said quietly. The words weren't loud, but they landed like a dropped gavel. He stood with his hands behind his back, posture straight, the ceremonial rifle now resting against his spine, as if the weight had doubled. He wasn't speaking to anyone in particular, or perhaps he was speaking to everyone. Another aide tried to pivot. "In fairness, the car was locked, reinforced, completely secure." Adrian's gaze didn't move. "Security isn't silence." That gave them pause. The older agent cleared his throat, still trying to preserve some sliver of control. "She wasn't in danger, technically. She wasn't harmed." Adrian turned to him then, fully, his voice calm but direct. "No. She was alone and small and frightened, and she had no idea when help was coming." A beat. "You call that safe because the doors were locked. I call that forgotten." No one interrupted. No one dared. Then his voice dropped, not angry, not accusing, just devastatingly clear. "A child is not safe just because you can't see the danger. She is safe when she knows she hasn't been left." Silence. Again. Heavier this time. The courtyard had cooled, not from temperature, from clarity. Trump remained at the far end, half watching now, but wisely choosing not to interject. His team, red-faced and uncertain, were beginning to murmur among themselves, quietly rewriting the story of what just happened. But it didn't matter, because everyone who mattered had already seen it unfold, and none of them would forget it. Inspector Hartley approached Adrian quietly. "You're staying on rotation?" Adrian nodded, until relieved. Hartley gave him a look, part respect, part apology, and moved on without another word. The red tunic, now dusted slightly from kneeling stone, remained immaculate in posture. Adrian didn't return to his original post. He never left it. The SUV's engine was finally switched off. The humming ceased. What remained was a soundless vacuum in the courtyard, the kind that follows the snapping shut of something undeniable. Palace aides resumed motion, but more slowly now, steps softer, glances lower. It wasn't fear, it was recognition. Something had just happened that wouldn't be listed in any official report, yet would redefine the mood of the institution for days. The interior of the vehicle was inspected briefly, not with gloves and forensic kits, but with eyes that now understood what they'd failed to notice. A folded pink cardigan on the seat, a crushed tissue near the console. The faint scent of cherry lip balm, The smallness of the space was unbearable now. A royal aide retrieved Charlotte's backpack from the footwell and zipped it gently before passing it to a junior attendant. Not like an item of luggage, but something sacred that had nearly been overlooked. Adrian Cole, meanwhile, had resumed his place near the West Arch. He had not been instructed to. He simply stepped back into his post, shoulders aligned, chined, rifle returned to rest, ceremonial posture restored. To the untrained eye, nothing had changed. But within the structure of Buckingham Palace, everything had. From a second-floor window above the colonnade, Charlotte appeared once more. She was flanked by a discreet governess, her face partially shadowed by curtains. Her eyes scanned the courtyard and locked instantly on the flash of red wool beneath the arch. She raised her hand in the faintest motion. Not a wave, just a signal. Adrian did not move, but he saw it. And his eyes, still beneath the tall black bearskin, blinked slowly once. She turned away. The moment was over. Across the yard, the American team remained close to their vehicles, speaking in quiet tones. No one argued. No one protested. Internal damage control had already begun, but not one person crossed back to the SUV. Trump's convoy would depart on time, with press statements polished and cameras never having glimpsed the truth. But those who had been present, who had watched it unfold, would carry the memory not as scandal, but as instruction. Nearby, Inspector Hartley made one final adjustment to the day's ledger, a discreet notation of the time, the guard involved, and a note in all caps. Child found. Door forced open with cause. No injury. Action correct. He closed the folder and exhaled slowly. And in the centre of the courtyard, beneath stone arches older than empires, Sergeant Adrian Cole stood motionless. Not for show. Not for pride. But because his duty was not just to stand still, it was to know when stillness is no longer protection. Was the Royal Guard right to override Trump's security team and force open the door, even without clearance? And what would you have done if you saw a child alone in that car, but everyone kept telling you it was handled? Let us know in the comments. We read every one. And if you believe no child should ever be left to wait in silence, tap that like button. Hit subscribe, press the bell icon, and join us tomorrow for another story from behind palace walls, the ones the cameras never see. Share this with someone who still believes a uniform isn't just tradition, it's protection. We've got more powerful moments waiting for you right here on the screen. Click now, and we'll see you in the next one. Same time, same place, every single day.